Can allow me to just rephrase a little part of the question that I asked you. I know the traditional knowledge exists, and we've been talking constantly as a solution about the bottom-up approach and community participation, and preserving and reviving this traditional knowledge. But when I look at the presentation that you made and about the amount of chemical pollutants that we have, I mean. Problem of that magnitude and the increase in the number of like arsenic or cadmium, do you think, like, I don't think we have the traditional knowledge to sort of combat to that sort of a problem, that high technical problem. So of course there has to be a balance between the traditional knowledge and along with some technical knowledge as well, or increased advanced level of knowledge to deal with chemical pollution of that magnitude. So that's why I ask, is there any positive example or any case study where just by traditional knowledges we have revived a certain patch of river or in a community at a very micro level?
I know that knowledge exists and the technology exists.
Mike.
Sorry, knowledge exists and the technology exists. But unfortunately, we don't have the commitment. That's the biggest problem. So I don't want to really question the technology. For instance, there is a chemical pollution, huge kind of a chemical pollution leading to death of a river. I mean, it's not that it is impossible to retrieve the river. It is not that it is impossible to, revitalize the river and restore flow. Thames could be restored and Rhine River could be restored, and why not Covam, Buckingham Canal, or Apala? It could be. We have the technology. We can do all that. But unfortunately, we don't have the commitment. We have resources. I would not say that India doesn't have we have resources. Through river restoration scheme, as I said, through the Ministry of Water Resources, billions of rupees are spent in every river, in every state, including in Chennai rivers, but without really plugging those outfalls of the pollution load. What's the point in restoring these rivers, spending this money without doing that? Because, as I said, there is a nexus between the government and the market. As long as that exists, it's very, very difficult to do anything about it.
Two things I think we...
Let her answer.
I think I'll first answer the children. What's a penstock? You are asking a very fundamental question. Water is stored behind a dam for generating power. So the water has to be taken to the turbines. You know what's a turbine? Yeah. So suppose there are 3 turbines operating, then you would need 3 penstocks. So the number of penstock will depend upon the number of turbines that are operating for generating the power. So water from the reservoir would be taken down the gradient, because always it needs a gradient for converting kinetic energy into electrical energy. So you take it down, and each penstock goes into each turbine where it is converted into electricity and then goes through the...
Penstock is the pipe which takes the water from the reservoir to the power.
To the power house. So that's, you picturize it in your mind now. You go and visit some station, then it will be more clear to you. I think you should do that. And, pardon?
There is transportation.
Yeah. Second is regarding sand, the question that you earlier asked. I would not add to what, I would raise one more point along with this. One is, if you take the state of Kerala, because we are specifically asking about Kerala, we are building more than we actually need, to be very honest with you. For example, a rough estimation was made in which 7 lakh houses in Kerala are shut. I mean, they are not being used but being constructed. So do we have any, I think it is time for us also to have some norms into building norms. I think the building rules in each state have to be amended, by which this much family with this many members should only construct a house with this much square feet. Then that brings down the need for the raw material. That's also another way of approaching it, and many groups are advocating for that. And second thing is, bamboo as a technology which is reducing the use of sand in building materials is now being propagated by many architects who think differently in Kerala. And of course, they are building such structures, which is because bamboo is something can be grown. We can cultivate bamboo in any wasteland, anywhere, on river sides. You saw it in Wayanad, it's there. So I'm not saying this will replace the entire thing, but this is an augmentation by which gradually you can bring out certain norms. But of course, we need amendment to the building rules. As far as the revenue department or revenue ministry in each state will have to take a very strong role. That is my take on that. And the other thing is regarding ecological flows. I agree with you 100% that now we'll have to move into a stage in which We have to allow ecological flows. But I think, ideally, if you would say minimum alteration from the natural flows seasonally would be ideal. But I don't think it is possible because we have destroyed the rivers so much that even minimum alteration, even we don't know what's the natural flow because we don't have a pre-dam or a pre-pollution data even. We don't have 50, 60 years back data, how the river used to flow. We don't have it. So we have to start from certain status quo. But let me tell you, at least as I foresee it, allowing ecological flows would be an adaptive process and a negotiating process because there are a lot of agencies who are going to come in. There are irrigation projects going on, there are drinking water projects, there are polluting industries, there are panchayats using water, there are large dams. So all these parties are there and all these are using the water, all they are altering the flow, all of them are contributing. So it has to be ultimately a negotiating process, and according to me it cannot be a standard like 50% or 20% for all the rivers in India. It's not going to work. According to me it has to be a region or at least for larger rivers at least river specific and for smaller rivers at least region specific. We'll have to arrive at that and it's a long process but we have to, it is time that we go into that. Then the next one is you're asking about traditional practices. Of course, for example, if you take the Kerala region, I'm not talking about the entire Western Ghats region, the western slopes. The land itself was used to store maximum water because the land was like that. That is how it is. Like you were saying, if you look at it from a watershed perspective, the land you could store water. And in the upstream areas, people used to have used to take water from the streams. Looking at the seasonality, using small bamboo structures for diverting it to, and very important was that they used to preserve those catchments. So that is the backward forward relationship people had with the small catchments in which they used to depend. But that has all changed now because when large dams came, when larger irrigation structures came, people like in the tanks, it happened in Tamil Nadu, people have started abandoning open wells, abandoning small farm ponds. Because in the midland area, especially in the laterite hill areas, you had farm ponds, which used to collect the water. You had surangams. Surangam is the best example in northern Kerala and in the Karnataka region also, up to Maharashtra, where water used to be stored because it's a laterite, and the rainfall used to get collected in these surangams, and people used to draw water from these surangams, also called turangam, means small tunnels built through the laterite hills, and these used to connect even small streams which are below the laterite. We cannot see it as you see, which are invisible. Small channels built through these laterite hills because these are very high iron and manganese deposits, very hard, not like the granite. Granite is different. But even these have been obstructed. For example, cashew plantations on these laterite hills has brought down the water percolating capacity of these laterite hills. So what I'm trying to tell is, it's not so simple. It's very complicated. So unless you change the land use pattern there, you will not be able to store water and recharge these surangams. And the people down here, they themselves, the people who are using the surangams are converting this. So what I'm trying to say is there are different factors playing. The cash crop economy which came here is operating in a different manner, which is not preserving the water at all. So unless now you come back and look at it from a watershed perspective, then only I think you'll have to find solutions. That is how I look at this. And then and of course another attempt that is made in Kerala for reviving systems is in Palakkad district. Because in Palakkad district, as I said earlier, there are 9 irrigation projects, and none of these 9 irrigation projects are now delivering their, how much they have. There is a projected Ayakat area in which you can provide the water for irrigation, but none of these projects, all the 9 projects have failed miserably due to so many reasons, as I said earlier. But then now gradually what has happened is because of the continuous drought in Palakkad district, the district panchayat and some of the NGOs and farmers groups came together, and all the larger ponds, not the tanks like in Tamil Nadu because we don't have that much area here, the smaller farm ponds, 10 acre, 15 acre, 20 acre, 5 acre, smaller ponds, which are all silted up, which are not in use because of the canal system which had come in, these were revived. Desiltation, and then people started protecting the catchment, allowing the channels, the streams to come, join these tanks. The streams were clogged. Many of the tanks have been converted into plastic dumps.
Can you, she just wants to ask a question.
Yeah,
so-
please.
Good afternoon. I just wanted
Sit
to
down.
ask if we as students, what can we do to help restoring the rivers? Because we know about all the pollutants, but what can we do?
Big question.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's a huge question, I think.
All of them have left, and I think we should have.
Yeah.
We will come to your school and give you a lecture.
Thank you so much.
And
It's a very big question. Okay, and you can't ask this question when you leave.
And I think,
A lot.
One thing one can say,
yeah.
no,
Absolutely.
all right.
You can do a lot. Absolutely.
from
you can
both,
do very,
both
very
the speakers have outlined a number of things which need to be done. But before all that, first you must understand.
Yeah, exactly.
That understanding process starts now. What you can do is to try and get a better understanding of the problems. Then you will come to the right answers.
So one more thing,
glad you asked this
yeah,
question.
I would also advise that the teacher could take them to some river, let them get a feel of the river. That's most important. Everything comes later.
Take them to Yamuna.
Take them to Yamuna. Get them a feel of the river.
Get in touch with Manoj Mishra.
Yeah, Manoj Mishra.
Get in touch with Manoj Mishra and take them to the river.
Yeah, take them to the river. Okay.
So I think, last question.
I'd like to respond to the question you raised. What do we do under these circumstances? My answer is, let's do scientific studies so far. I've been in this business since before independence, and I have been trying to introduce scientific studies. I have read Mr. Vedanathan's latest book. We are terribly ignorant of modern developments and the challenges and how to meet them. And what I have done, I met the minister and I suggested that why can't all the IITs work together with the government, and Jaran Ramesh immediately responded, and he has instituted a committee that all the IITs look about Ganga Basin. Now Kaveri goes same thing. Why can't all the IITs of that area, there's Gindi and IIT Bombay, IIT Madras and your institution, you see, our scientific capability on the subject, I started this work since British days. I have 6 books. I have designed most of them since North India. And still I find that they are totally, even the academic institutions, totally innocent of the modern developments. Nobody will talk. You see, they will be talking about integrated water resources. Now, we have been arguing for the last 3 years that integrated water resources is outdated. We have to be societal environmental. My 7th book is on this societal environmental. The tragedy is the government is, of course, a bureaucratic government. Of course, Mr. Iyer is one of the few exceptions in the government who does a scientific study. They are terribly scientific. And the academic institutions are still. Now I have one of the early doctoral candidates from Kerala, one of the early doctoral candidates from Chennai, Madras. And yet, if I ask them what are the 10 latest books, you see, I spend my summers at Harvard University. I live here for 9 months, I live in USA in 3 months. The latest book, of course, they are not available in India, but the scientific community is not conscious of what is happening here. Now, I am saying there's strong statements. As far as I'm concerned, whatever little money I have devoted to the development of the country. And I go and study at Harvard every summer. Actually, my 7th book I'm holding back because I have to study the subject. The simple fact is, we have to be conscious we are backward in development, and we have to be conscious that we have the highest level of technology, we won't be able to survive. Thank you.
I think with that we must now close this. Actually, we've gone up to 1:30. Last time we wound up a little earlier. And attendance was not bad in the end. People came in. Sorry. So we've had 2 very excellent presentations and a rich, interesting discussion. I hope that we will continue with this for the next remaining 3 programs also. I think lunch is on. Yes. Yes. Okay. Good.
You didn't make your.
But I'm glad that there was so much discussion.
Yeah, yeah.